I'm back. It's Nate Dermer here with Dermer Studios LLC, and this is our third and final review of the Mavic 3's 7x lens. So this is the second camera, the little camera up on the top, and we've done about probably pretty close to 30 hours of flying. And when I wasn't working, a good chunk of that was spent testing out this 7x camera. If you haven't been following our saga, we've actually had two Mavic 3s now. The first one, that's showing the footage right now, you can see it had some pretty significant issues. We had this weird double reflection of the sun, and then this horrible lens flare that made shooting into the sun really just impossible to get anything close to decent footage. You can see another issue we discovered here in this clip where the highlights tend to bleed vertically into the rest of the image. Also not good. And as you can see from this clip, the AF system has this nasty little habit of refocusing pretty frequently. It's busted probably between a quarter and a fifth of the shots we've captured. It seems to be worse when the subject is further away, and it also seems to be worse when it's not as defined. So if you're shooting above the horizon at the center point, you'll see that happen more often than not. And then there's the issue with the softness. With the first drone, I was getting an effective resolution of somewhere around 1080p, sometimes closer to 720p, and it didn't really matter what atmospheric or temperature conditions there were at the time. It was not good. So after my first two videos, I've gotten a lot of feedback, some good questions, some good suggestions, and in the end, I was pretty sure my issue was, at least to some degree, an anomaly, that just a manufacturing issue with my specific drone. So I asked Amazon to provide me a replacement. They did, and it arrived about 3 weeks ago now, and I've been testing it pretty thoroughly since then. From here on out, the footage is all from the new replacement Mavic 3, and as you can see, it's pretty close to perfect. Well, okay. Maybe not perfect. It's acceptable? At least in most scenarios, it is now. It's certainly a big improvement from what my original Mavic 3 was able to produce, and that, I'm convinced, was the result of something getting knocked out of alignment or something like that. As you can see from this clip, the footage is still a bit soft, and that autofocus really likes to get in the way. That being said, the resolution in the replacement is a marked improvement over what I was able to get reliably out of my original Mavic 3. And then there's just the sheer reach of this camera, which without it, I wouldn't be able to get shots like this where I'm able to stay out of the way of the birds, not interrupt them or disturb them, but still get some pretty tight, epic shots of them just acting naturally, as though I wasn't even there. As you can see from the shot over Amelia Island that we captured last weekend, the sun flare issue that we were having with that first Mavic 3 is all but gone, and that was the biggest problem I was having, so I'm very thankful for that. Some of you had suggested that perhaps part of the problem was the filter that comes standard on the front of the drone. And while my replacement was certainly doing a better job, I wanted to see if we could stretch it even further by taking off that element. So here's a little bit of that footage. Truth be told, I'm not sure there was any significant improvement, if any at all, from removing that filter. You can see in this clip actually that problem I was having with my original drone with that highlight bleed is happening here in this clip as well. One thing I did notice in this clip, which of course you can tell isn't a 7x zoom, it's just the main camera, is that the green dot, it doesn't appear in as much of the frame. It fades out when you go left or right more quickly than with the filter on. Of course, I'm not the first person to complain about that green goblin of a dot that shows up every time you're shooting at the sun with a main camera, or even with a 7x zoom camera. As you can see from this shot, it just completely ruined that angle, and there wasn't any way to get around it. And really, it's symptomatic of a problem that I'm not sure there's a fix to. and really ultimately has me considering returning the drone altogether. So let's dig into that part just a little bit. Now, right up front, guys, I need to tell you, I'm not an optics expert, far from it. I probably know enough to get me into trouble, but I am noticing a difference between like my professional Canon lenses, this Mavic 3 set of lenses, and even a difference between that and my Mavic 2 Pro's lens. Significant differences that I suspect are the root cause of what's causing the problem. Even with the standard filter removed, you can see that there is a lot of reflectivity among the internal elements of both these lenses, and there's a really strong green hue to that reflection. When you compare that to my Canon 24-70 lens, or even the lens on the Mavic 2 Pro, what you see is that anti-reflectivity coating, or UV coating, is much less pronounced, much less, half in the case of the Mavic 2, probably a third in the case of the professional 24-70 lens. So here's what I'm pretty sure is happening. Again, not an optics expert, but the reason you see a flipped mirror image of the sun in the form of this dot is because it's actually reflecting past the focal point from the sensor, reflecting out into the lens array, and then reflecting back into the camera. And so that's why you get that. And so these anti-reflective UV coatings that help to prevent unwanted light from coming in are actually trapping that unwanted bright spot inside the lens array. And because it's more enhanced on the Mavic 3, I suspect that's why we're getting that really pronounced and also really green dot, as opposed to something that's usually a little more subtle and a little more amber. So I think that's the root cause of the green dots we're seeing, both really pronounced in the main camera and a little more subdued in the 7X camera. But as a professional photographer who primarily does stills, I think there's actually a third issue, and for me it's an even bigger issue, and that's a green cast that the raw images tend to have. That's actually the reason I returned the Air 2S, was because in editing in RAW, it was very difficult to get that out. You move the slider towards magenta and you get a magenta feel without really removing that green. And of course, if you don't move that, you still have this green, greenish amber color that's unpleasant and just doesn't look quite natural. And so you can see that here in these images that I've been scrolling through. And now keep in mind, these are images I've already edited to reduce that green as much as I could. I have noticed that I think it's most pronounced when you are about 90 degrees from the sun. So when you're pointed, your camera's pointed 90 degrees perpendicular to the location of the sun. It seems to be the worst at that point. So undoubtedly, I've been nitpicky about these problems. They're areas that rub me the wrong way, and others as well. But all said and done, it is still very innovative what they're offering. And so I want to leave you with just some of my favorite shots I've been able to capture over the last month with this 7X lens. They're not perfect. There's room to grow. Software will be able to fix some of it. But still, the reach is a innovation that I think we don't fully understand yet, just the capabilities and the new avenues of creativity that's going to open up. So here are some of those favorites, and yeah. So that's where I'm at. All said and done, I I don't know if I'm going to keep the drone or not. There's a lot I like about it, and there's the promise of a lot of software improvements coming out soon, some which have already landed, and that's great. But as a photographer, this hue issue is it's causing me extra time, and it's a headache, and it's already the reason I got rid of one drone. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'd love to hear if anyone's found a workaround in Lightroom, maybe some form of color grading that you've figured out that dials it in and gets rid of that unpleasant green. But regardless, I am all ears. We'd certainly appreciate it if you like and subscribe to our channel. It helps us make more content like this. And thanks as always. Have a great Christmas, New Year, holiday season. And stay tuned for more drone content coming up in the coming weeks. Take care.